All right, my interest in aviation postcards started with this guy, Italian Air Marshal Italo Balbo, who in 1933 led a group of 24 seaplanes crossing the North Atlantic from Rome to the Chicago World's Fair. That's Balbo pictured there on top. Those are the engines of the plane to the left and the crew and some of the planes. And this was honoring the 10th anniversary of the Italian Air Force, the Crociera Aerea del Decanali. And here's one of the planes in flight, which I just thought was a fascinating vehicle. It's got the tandem push-pull engines mounted on the wing between the two hulls. Uh, Twin booms support the tail fins and the three rudders. Here they are arriving at the Century Progress. It was a 2-week trip from Rome to Chicago in 1933. They traveled over 11,000 miles, and they did it in legs, and they couldn't take off or land or depart or arrive depending on weather. So that's why it took so long. And so while I'm looking for Italian aviation postcards, here's the plane on advertising cards for an Italian airline. Here's the backside, Società Aerea Mediterranea, and it shows their routes. And here's two more advertising cards. The card on the left is one of my absolute favorite postcards. So saying when I was looking for Italian aviation postcards, I would come across French aviation postcards. Here's the French have a long aviation history, starting with lighter than air airships, and we're very proud of their achievements. This card is celebrating the September 1st through 3rd, 1930 flight by Dieudonné Costas and Maurice Bolante, who flew the Point d'interrogation, the question mark, from Paris to New York. It was the first heavier than air aircraft to reach New York in the more difficult westbound direction between the two cities. They flew about 3,700 miles in 37 hours. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you see sans escale, which is nonstop. Here's a nice picture of the plane and the two pilots. And here's what the plane looked like in color. That more difficult westbound flight had previously claimed the lives of Charles Nungesser and Francois Colli, who took off on May 8th to make the first nonstop transatlantic flight between Paris and New York, and disappeared. Their plane was named L'Oiseau Blanc, the White Bird. And less than 2 weeks later, Charles Lindbergh flies from New York to Paris, and he claims the Orteig Prize. And in the movie Spirit of St. Louis, there's a scene where James Stewart asks if anyone's heard of Nungesser and Coley, if they've arrived yet. And here are two more cards celebrating French aviation achievements. Un Triomphe Français on the left is celebrating Dieudonné Costas and co-pilot Joseph Labrie flying between Africa and Brazil, the South Atlantic crossing. And the card on the right is another Africa to Brazil flight completed by René Cousinet, who's a film built the plane, and he's flying with the pilot Jean Mermoz, who is in the upper right-hand corner. And this was also in 1933. And then I found Air France cards. Air France was founded in 1933 through the merger of 5 existing airlines. Before World War II, it had over 23,000 miles of routes in Europe, the Mediterranean, South America, Africa, and Asia. World War II shut down the airline, and then it returned to service in 1946. And these first three cards that you're going to see are by the French graphic designer Lucien Boucher, who called them planispheres. They depict Air France's expanding travel routes. And for example, on this card, there is no route between France and North America. On this later card, there is a route. And then on this 1950 card, you can see there are routes not just to North America, but also within North America. And during my research for this program, I learned that Air France had commissioned over 1,500 advertising posters by top French illustrators, which made me realize that the posters came first, and then some were reproduced as postcards. And many of the cards are signed, and if I can read the name, I'll try to pronounce it, but several of the artists' names aren't readable. This Europe card was done by Robert Falcucci, who was an illustrator and a good example of the artists that Air France hired. He did magazine ads for Renault. He illustrated the 1931 program for the Monte Carlo Rally and a 1937 poster for the French Railway PLM. And he also designed the 1967 Cannes Film Festival program. And you can see on this card, they're just showing all different destinations throughout Europe. There is the London Bridge and a Dutch windmill, um, the Colosseum, the Arc de Triomphe and Notre Dame and the Eiffel Tower, and amongst others. Now, all the standard size cards you're going to see, at least for my collection, are from between 1948 and 1954. And on the back side, they're all dated. You can see where it says 7/48. So that means July 1948. The planes you'll see depicted on the cards, and what Air France used back then was the DC-4 and also the Lockheed Constellation, which some people consider one of the most beautiful planes ever built, with that nice swoop on the top of the fuselage and the triple rudders. Now, this North American card is from 1948. You can see it shows the constellation in the upper right-hand corner. And you think of North America, the United States, skyscrapers. In 1946, Air France began its first route between Paris and New York on a DC-4. It was a 20-hour flight that required refueling stops in Ireland and Newfoundland. The Constellation reduced that to about 15 hours, still had to make refueling stops, but it was a lot more comfortable. And you can see over the sea in France is the Air France's logo, the winged horse with the dragon's tail. And this has an artist's name, but I can't make it out. Uh, this card for just another card, general card showing destinations in Europe, has the constellation flying overhead. It's by the artist Edmond Moreau, who did several Air France posters and postcards. And you can, once again, you can see there's the London Bridge and the Colosseum and the Arc de Triomphe. And I think in that darker green swath is a castle. So that could be Germany. And someone skiing in the Alps. The war is over now in 1948. And I think some of these cards were used as an effort to encourage Americans to visit Europe. And I have my own theory that some movies that came out in the late 40s and early 50s, like Three Coins in the Fountain and Roman Holiday, were also had a kind of another purpose to tell Americans that it's okay to visit not just France, but our World War II adversaries. I have two versions of this Paris card. This first one is from 1954. See, I think that shows the constellation flying over Paris. This second one is from 1950, a little earlier view. And on the back of this card is fares between Palma and Mallorca, Spain, to Paris. And the franc back then, it was 350 francs to the dollar. So under tariffs, where you see Paris to Palma, that would have been about $47 one way and $84 round trip. This Paris card is from 1951, kind of saying what Paris is going to look like in the year 2000. And I think pretty much that's what it looked like. Doesn't change that much. And once again, the constellation flying overhead and the Air France logo in the letter C. So a lot of thought went into these post first the posters and then the postcards. And here's a nice card from the Côte d'Azur by Bernard Villemot. He did a series of travel posters for Air France. And you can see these posters for, for sale online, and they go for thousands of dollars. Here's another card for flying to North America. They say the US is all about skyscrapers, and that looks like a representation of the Chrysler building, the tallest building shown. And here's a card for South America, where the constellation has a very big role, and that would be Corcovado Mountain in Rio de Janeiro, where Christ the Redeemer statue is, and this card is from 1948. Here's another South America card from 1954 by Lucien Boucher, who did the previous map cards. And now South America in Rio de Janeiro and Buenos Aires also has skyscrapers. And once again, Constellation and the Air France logo prominently shown. For North Africa, this is 1951, also by Bernard Villemot. It shows a minaret. And a lot of cards when where France had colonies. And of course, in North Africa, they had Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. And here's a card, another card from North Africa. A card from West Africa, where they had colonies in Mauritania, Senegal, Sudan, Ivory Coast, and Benin. And here's one for West Africa and Equatorial Africa, showing a big constellation flying overhead. Here's for the Extreme Orient. And in the hat, which is the Asian style hat, you can see a form which represents India to the left and Southeast Asia to the right. That would be Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Malaysia. And what I discovered during a visit to France many years ago is that because of French colonies in Indochina, coconut was brought to France. And in France, you can get really great coconut macaroons and coconut cookies. And I do have a fondness for coconut. Another card for the Extreme Orient, and also with the shapes showing India and Southeast Asia down below. And once again, the constellation. And here's just a nice card for Paris to Tokyo. Now, in 1952, Air France moved to Orly Airport, south of Paris. This card is by Jacques Nathan. There's also a poster of this card. He'd done commercial works for many companies, including Mazda and Telefunken. And his art is held by institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art in New York and the Smithsonian. Oh, and the cards are still dated in the center line. That card was from 1962. Since they're flying out of Orly, they're moving into the jet age in 1959 when Air France purchased French-built Caravels and Boeing 707s. Here's a Boeing 707, able to travel from Paris to New York in 8 hours nonstop with as many as 180 passengers, which is about twice as many as the propeller-driven Constellation. Now, this 1958 version of North America by Jacques Nathan has the stylized skyscrapers, what looks to be a Joshua tree, an oil well, and a Mississippi paddle wheel steamboat. And I can only think of one steamboat operating in 1958 that would have had worldwide attention, and that would have been the Disneyland ride, which had been in operation since the park opened in 1955. Well, I suppose it could be a steamboat on the Mississippi, but I still go for Disneyland. This card is advertising Air France as it being the world's largest airline in 1955, and now its network was over 150,000 miles. This giraffe, a little play on words. It's the longest network in the world. This is by Raymond Sauvignac in 1949. And his works, along with contemporary postcard artist Bernard Villemont, were shown at the Gallery of Beaux-Arts in Paris. The finger, which says at the forefront of progress, done by Jean Carlu, who was in the United States during World War II and made posters to promote an increase in American production. And here's one of them now. You can see his name in the lower left-hand corner, and he had a way with hands. Here's this card is promoting Air France carrying cargo. It says they transport everywhere. And the artist is Guy Georget, and we'll see a lot of cards from him. And then just a lot of different styles. Here's just a nice view of Paris with the fence and the flowers and Notre Dame and the Ile de la Cité and a boat. This card just showing the French countryside. In the yellow square, that looks like that could be routes throughout the country. Just another nice card by Francois Vernier. And oh, I saw the poster version of this card for sale for $2,500. Just a really nice card. It's kind of a stained glass or a mosaic look. This postcard is available as a poster. It's 1961 Jean Carlu, and we like to collect postcards showing postcards. Well, here you can buy a poster showing posters because it's got the shows the man putting up posters. Here's another nice card by Jacques Nathan, kind of in the mosaic style. This just a French card showing the weather vane, kind of a country manner, and the rooster is a French national symbol. And I think this is sort of a seacoast manor on the French Riviera. And this is by Guy Georget. And I always like artists elongate automobiles. And this is I think, just a great card for the Côte d'Azur. I can't read the name in the lower left-hand corner, but it's a great image from 1964, and I expect James Bond to appear any moment. Card for Rome. I think it's by Jacques Nathan. Uh, and once in a while, I come across the same card in English and also in the language of that country. And here's another pair for Spain. I believe the German and the German cards and these Spanish cards. Um, I couldn't find any information about the artist, so I should have asked the AI to make up something for me. These Greek cards I know are by Guy Georget, who also did the elephant cargo card and the French Riviera cards. And these are also by Georget. We've got a hookah and a 707. Another card by Guy Georget. This Morocco card, even though the 707 is very small, it is an important part of the image. And this card for Africa showing the open air market. South America with the toucan at the top of the mobile passenger boarding stairs, and I'm sure many of us remember using those. Guy Georget 1962 for India, and by Villemot in 1956, another card for India. And just a nice card by Jacques Nathan, 1959 for Japan. And then this card for the Soviet Union by Jean Collin. He's another artist who did a lot of advertising posters for Air France and others. This card is dated 1961 during the Cold War, when the United States and Soviet Union were still doing atmospheric tests of nuclear weapons. Now, it's not unusual when looking for a specific topic like Air France to find unusual versions. So I found these two QSL cards uh, by the same ham radio operator, I guess in Tunisia, which was a French colony until 1956. And on the back, he gives his QSL information. And for those who don't know, and I didn't know, although I'd always heard the term QSL, it's just a code used by ham radio operators to acknowledge receipt of another ham radio operator's transmission. It's from a Q code. So there's Q in different letters. And then there's card for Great Britain that on the back is from a Air France discussing the coming to France for the Marian year, which I had to look up. It is a designation given by the Catholic Church to calendar years in which Mary, the mother of Jesus, is to be particularly celebrated. They don't follow a set pattern. There's only been two International Marian years declared. Uh, Pope Pius XII in 1954, which is when this card is from, and Pope John Paul II in 1987. And I do think it's interesting that Air France is using a card for Great Britain to encourage visitors to France. And then I thought I'd include cards of the Concorde because Air France was always at the forefront of technology. And so they and British Airways brought us the Concorde in 1976. They operated its inaugural supersonic transport service from Paris to Rio de Janeiro. In 1976, they also started service from Paris to Washington, D.C., and then Paris to New York in 1977. Paris to New York took 3.5 hours at about twice the speed of sound. Of course, it had the huge Delta wing, and in 2000, the Air France Concorde passenger jet on a charter flight crashed. and Air France was retired in May 2003. And with that, I'm going to retire from my program and will return the screen.
Wow, that's an amazing presentation, Dan, and I think everyone's going to really have a lot to say about this. And the more I've seen it, I just wanted to say thank you. And the cards are so stylized, and your scholarship is really, really great.
Okay,
And
well, you're a school teacher, Joe, so what,
well,
slap the ruler and wake everybody up.
hey, everyone, we got to talk about this one. I mean, the art alone, plus the scholarship, and then there's just so much with the airlines and the whole mixture. There's so much. These cards bring a lot to the table, a lot to the table. So, anyone has anything to say? I know there's some questions in the chat. I'll start there. Clarissa was saying, and I can't pronounce that, but it equals transport everything everywhere.
Yeah,
Transport
in
tout part out.
one of your postcard,
Yeah,
transport tout partout, you translate that transporting everywhere. It's actually stronger because it said transport everything
everything
everywhere.
everywhere. Well,
So it's really
yeah.
boasting that they they
It
can do
made me
everything.
think, yeah, what were they like they have the elephant, but I mean, did they really do an
Yeah,
elephant? That's interesting, you know? They probably
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Well, you know what I forgot to mention, Air France, it was state run, it was the national airline. So I think with having government backing, they were, encouraged to do all these posters and postcards to create interest, where maybe a private company wouldn't have done as much.
Dawn asked, did those ad pictures provide the name of the original illustrator for the copied posters? You want to speak more on that, Dawn?
Well, if yeah, they're all signed. I mean, not all of them are signed. Most of the cards are signed. Like I say, sometimes they're readable, sometimes they're not. Oh, there was one. I'm trying to remember who I think it was Guy Georget, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I could not find any biographical information about him online, but I did see a little mention that two of his posters were on an episode of Pawn Stars. Somebody brought two of his posters in to the pawn shop. It's too bad I couldn't watch that episode. Maybe I would have learned something about him.
Clarissa asked, it seems that on the more recent postcards, the logo's disappeared. Is that correct? And I kind of noticed that
I
as
think
well.
so. Yeah. Yeah. She's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And Dawn asked a great question I was thinking about after we went through the practice one, and I wanted to wait to ask it as well. And Dawn brought it up. Did any significant French artists, such as Picasso, design any of the posters you showed?
Not that significant, but they're all French artists, all illustrators and graphic artists, all of them. And they were, commercial artists who did this kind of work for lots of companies.
You
I
want?
have a question. I'm a new member through Michael
Yeah.
Black. Great presentation and just beautiful artwork. Back in the day, in the 1930s and 40s, where would someone have found these postcards? Would it have been given out on the airplane, at the airport, in hotels? Where would they have found these postcards?
Well, see, they're all from the 40s into the 50s. I'm assuming back then, Air France and other airlines had their own ticket offices.
Okay,
So you could go to their ticket office and maybe find them there. Maybe the guy with the QSL cards went to it. Maybe he worked in a ticket office and just took a bunch of cards home.
got it.
Yeah, so ticket offices, maybe I don't know if at the airport, but certainly at the ticket office or a travel agent. They would have had them too.
Hmm,
They would have just sent the posters out to travel agents to put up in their offices.
right.
And they all got torn down and thrown away, which is why they cost so much money. The cards are fairly reasonably priced. You can find them for no more than $10 to $15.
I wanted to add really quick. I see how you have your hand up. Dan and I were speaking earlier with the practice one that he used to go to the Grosvenor Hotel, airline shows. That
Yeah.
would be in South San Francisco.
Yeah.
Did you see any of those posters there back in the 90s? Because they would have been cheaper value then, or they would have been.
I bought a, TWA poster for Paris there once for, like $100. And as soon as I bought it, somebody else came up and wanted it. It's too late. What did you do at the hotel, Joe?
Oh, I started out there at 15 and
Yeah,
a half years old
yeah,
as a busboy and worked my
yeah,
way all the way up to a manager of the
yeah.
bar, was bartender and manager.
Bartender. Yeah,
And I hit that show quite often.
yeah,
It came twice a year, I think. And
yeah,
I bought all kinds of airline stuff as a kid.
yeah.
Hal, you had a question?
Well, I was just wondering, do you find these usually in advertising? I go through advertising. I love to see what the dealer has, and I can't remember any Air France cards in the dealer's stocks that I've seen, but maybe I just overlooked them.
Well, I can't recall buying many of them at a general postcard show.
Oh,
I know I bought some at the aviation shows that Joe is mentioning, and I'm sure I bought some in Paris because when there were postcard shops in Paris, I'd go in looking for Italian aviation cards back when I was
mm,
doing mostly Balbo. And you ask to look for aviation cards, and everything they have is French.
yeah,
They don't know any other country. And so I might have bought some there. And there's a few European websites. Some of them are, one of them is an auction site, and others are just, buy it now sites. And I found a few there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Yeah.
presentation. I just loved it.
Oh,
Oh,
thanks.
great.
The art of those cards is amazing. All the different styles of art.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're really catchy.
Yeah.
And I want to just get lucky and because I go through dollar bins and dollar boxes of
Yeah.
cards, and I'm just hoping to get lucky on these cards now that I know what to look for.
Okay. Well, I'll give you my want list.
I
Yeah,
have to
they
go.
are they are really,
Yeah.
really the design are
Yeah.
fantastic, but the French are known for that. Even today's on modern postcard, on postcard for shows
Yeah.
and everything, they are really, really
Yeah.
designing and pushing it.
Yeah, and also posters. They love posters. When you're in the metro stations, there are posters everywhere. They have those kiosks they used to have around town that would be covered with posters. And Toulouse-Lautrec did posters for the Moulin Rouge.
Don,
So
I have a good number of cards of American airline advertising cards.
yeah.
Are those rare or are they quite frequent in people's collection?
Um, Everything's getting scarce,
Uh-huh.
you know.
But they did the same
Yeah,
thing in the
yeah.
American airlines.
I know with American airline posters, very often it depends on the destination. Cities like San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles are more popular,
And Hawaii.
and Hawaii. Yeah.
Patrick, you had something you wanted to
Yeah.
ask.
Oh, I was going to mention Balbo. I mean, he was a fascinating character,
Yeah.
but he was friends with Mussolini, and
Yeah. Yeah. He was part of the
then
group.
yeah, and he well, one, it's hard to find anything for him. I've tried collecting anything of his stuff, and you can't get it. And then, or I haven't been able to. But then when he died, there was a bunch of questionable things that happened around his death.
Yeah.
They're questioning whether or not he was murdered by Mussolini because he started speaking out against Mussolini. And even though they were friends when they were younger,
Well,
it was,
they were friends
yeah,
for up to a point. Um,
yeah,
when Balbo returns to Rome after the trip to Chicago World's Fair. He's given a hero's welcome, a parade. He's given a sash and medals, and he almost immediately shipped off to Libya because
yeah,
for Mussolini it was a very narrow spotlight. And I also learned a few years ago, Mussolini then had all of the planes destroyed. They didn't want any, remnant remaining that related to Balbo's historic mission. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's what
I
happened
think,
what happened to Balbo in Libya
and I
is
think you said there's one plane left, Dan.
there is one from another flight, 1927, a pilot who flew from Africa to Brazil, and that plane is in a museum in Brazil.
I wrote down when you were doing the presentation. I'm just really curious. I'm always into hotel history
Yeah,
stories about that. What hotel did the Flyers stay at? Those 12 Flyers when they came into Chicago?
we
Because I bet there's some great bar stories with those 12 and Balbo, those nights. I know there's got to be stories out there. What hotels they
That's
stay at?
that's a good question. I've not looked into that.
Yeah,
Where did they stay? I know they gave them banquets at
yeah.
different hotels, but I don't know where they stayed. They had he was celebrated in Soldiers Field. 100,000 people came out because there's a lot of Italians in Chicago. And then on the return trip, he stopped off in New York. Once again, he was celebrated there. A lot of Italians. Met FDR. Was on Time Magazine's Man of the Week in 1933.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That was amazing when you gave that presentation a while back.
Yeah.
And I thought of that and then wanted to ask it again when I seen that
Yeah.
again. Mark?
It's Mark again. I was going to say I live in Chicago,
Yeah.
and probably in those years it could have been the Drake Hotel or the Palmer House. I'll see if I can find out for you.
Okay. And there's still Balbo Avenue.
Yeah, there is right there, right near,
Yeah.
not too far from Buckingham
Yeah.
Fountain.
Well, you can see that this is a
Okay.
great one. And I really want to thank Dan because initially last month I said, well, when I said I think we can get the club going back, in December. Let me call Dan real quick, or let me reach out to Dan. And Dan said, yes, I have a presentation ready to go that I gave for San Francisco. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then it just goes full circle. And thanks, Dan. You really
You're
impressed everyone
welcome.
here with
Great
this.
job.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.